I am here at Greenan Shore, and up there you can see Greenan Castle. What a beautiful place this is. This is Greenan Shore, and it's very relaxing. It's nice, and there's just this slight hint of warmth. And as I was walking through the dunes with Sky there, I could feel like a further warmth just from some of the marram grass that's round about, and just how it's trapped the heat in there. And as each ray of light was coming down, it was trapping more warmth. It's really nice. So you'll be able to hear these lovely sounds in the background, some seagulls, different birds, and the waves as well. Okay, so we're going to talk about what else can really help with pandemic recovery. It is an interesting concept because a big part of it is what's held within the psyche of the community, what's held within the hive, within the hub of society, within the world at large. And what manifested was this pandemic. And so, as people now have medical treatments and different things like that on the other side of this, alongside the measures, there's a kind of a space in between to create new, and there's more of a possibility of that. It's almost like a placebo effect in a way, in some ways even more so, even, you know, with the vaccines and with those vaccine efficacy being that some are very good or known to be very good and others not yet known. Despite that, there's still an ability to have a placebo effect in and amongst our communities as a whole. That we have this space and time where we feel psychologically capable that, okay, all the vulnerable people and vulnerable groups are tended to, or mostly, and now what can we create now that we don't have that extra burden or worry as much, in any way at least? What are the different things that we need to look out for? That's one of them. That is a part of pandemic recovery, which could be very strong. Another is that balance between creating something new and the already existing reality, which is also that there are multiple variants and these can continue to mutate. So in between this time of creating a new and the already existing reality, the fluctuation, the vaccinations, the non-vaccinators, the possibilities for new, there is this fine line, and we talked about it before, about technology poverty, and that doesn't mean to say that people are in poverty who have a technology or an internet poverty. It simply means that in some places, yes, they might have that, but in some places they may just not have the time to go on the internet. They may be working on the land. And so, to be honest with you, in some levels of the realm, it could be 6 and half a dozen and it might hardly even exist for them, and they might forget about it because they're so busy. And that creates within itself a new. I hear such a rumbling at the moment. I wonder if we're going to have some kind of Air Force thing going on. Probably. Oh yes, we do. An aircraft taking off from there. You can see it from there. In any case, that is one thing that can impact people's ability to garner the knowledge that they require with regards to the pandemic on the other side of it for those that actually do really need it, and that it might still impact those that aren't, completely cut off from society, those that will integrate but that don't have that same access because of their signal. Now, that happened where I was living before. There was a really difficult part in that there was hardly any signal. Great, this is going to be interesting. So we're going to be looking at the next part of this. This is 5, and I did actually have all of this recorded, and I was just going to put it out there, but it's been such an amazingly busy day. First of all, thanks be to God. Second of all, let's draw attention to this amazing day that it's been. This is Back Badge Day, so thanks to Papa and all his regiment and the continuation of the Gloucesters and those that have been in these regiments beforehand, and just everything that they stand for. The regiment basically got the back badge because they were able to fight back to back, and obviously they won. They're the only regiment that have that many colours in the entire of the United Kingdom. So they have achieved huge success on so many occasions. Papa's particular meetups were all with regards to Egypt. So it's really quite interesting when it comes to looking into the Bible aspects of everything and all the rest of it. So really want to give thanks obviously for Papa, but more importantly for my father as well, who I'm so pleased to have had and have in my life spiritually, as well as having had physically in my life to be blessed with. So 2 really amazing males in my life that have helped in my upbringing that I'm really thankful for. Thanks and all praise to God. Now when we move on with this, so today, actually tonight, we're going to be looking at additional support needs, and this is basically all about strong recovery from the pandemic, right? So I think that, we saw some really great characteristics today for strong pandemic recovery. Additional needs can be things like upbringing, culture, influence, difficulty standing on one's own 2 feet, maybe being too easily led by crowds. That kind of thing can be somewhat of an additional support need in terms of one's own character and being able to be a leader as a follower, and not so much of a follower rather with regards to what happens on a day like today when there's a big sporting event. So we've been really lucky when it comes to all of our rugby meetups because the players, the teams have been excellent, they've been so well disciplined, but we did have some problems with regards to obviously some other football things, as we know, and that was going to be going on today. That, in alignment with the fact that it is the Back Badge Day, all that combined obviously could have meant that there could have been an extra difficulty with it, because everybody wants to celebrate that and everybody wants to celebrate that kind of union. But within the regiment as well, if you have much wisdom, you understand that there are people across wide cultural differences, and that means across these different football teams as well, being realistic about it. So it's just really having a little bit more wisdom and a little bit more understanding about the overall bigger picture of things. And we really saw that a lot more today. I would say there's just a lot more wisdom in how people went about things, and both sides had their own respective kind of things that they would do in terms of being able to watch it. And it went really well. It was really successful. It was really good for everybody, for all sides. And what I really liked was the fact that they had like a united kind of front against racism. So it was like both of the teams chose to stand, which is what I obviously like facilitate and really kind of feel and believe in. I just feel that it's the right thing to do. And I believe that, you know, taking a knee, if that's what some people want to do, that's fine. But I just believe that there's more to it than meets the eye, and it's a complex situation with regards to what happened in America in particular. So we wanted to make sure that we were standing, and that's what our Scottish rugby team do as well. So each to their own in how they do that, but they're definitely against racism, and they make a very strong point about that. And you know, our rugby teams are excellent with regards to that. They have, like, you know, people from, like, all sides of things, and probably across, which would typically be in these two very different, divergent types of football. Teams are actually across the breadth of these rugby teams, which is excellent. So it's just a kind of maybe a slightly more ascended kind of level that we've got with the rugby teams and how they do things, but we're seeing that filtering through in the way people are being like just more kind of capable with the football teams as well, which is really good to see. So that's how we deal with these things, through education, through people like learning and bettering themselves, and also through education, through good role models. So I'm not going to say that every single time rugby were on or doing anything that it was perfect, but it was close to it, because even when they're outside, they've actually been wearing like masks a lot of the time, which is wild, but they've been doing that, and that's just absolutely amazing. Now we're going to go back to this and talk about other things. Now, we talked about other kind of types of needs that we might have. We've talked about mental needs, we've talked about emotional needs there, you know, group needs, influence needs, maturity needs, educational, in other words, needs. We've talked about actual financial and technological needs that might be additional. And we've also talked about even like psychological to like narcissism, socio, all that kind of thing, all these extra needs, even Asperger's, and all the difference in there. Now, it did mention that, I saw somebody laughing at this, I have like this really crazy stalker from like years ago. He's like just so obsessive with me, and he's on here like laughing about this. Like, please, clearly that's an additional need as well. Some people are really obsessive, so there's like obsessions as well. Like if someone's obsessed with something, someone or something, and they can't stand on their own 2 feet and find like God within themselves, that can be a very difficult and challenging thing in terms of the pandemic, to get people to calm down and just like, you know, like, so again, that could cause difficulties as well. So there's lots of these things. Now with this one, I don't directly know that that's what the problem there is, so I'm being very, very strict about it. Unless I have any other like notice or anything like that with regards to any mental health needs, then I'm going to be very strict about it, and that's just obvious. So you are only welcome on this page if you are making sure that you're being thoughtful and kind and caring, and you are considering this is a very important page that's all about our health, well-being, and most importantly our education. So additional needs in terms of also what was called, and this is what they're laughing at, it might be this as well though, this is another thing. It's really difficult because when I have gone into particular educational settings, these are labels that I have heard about. It doesn't mean to say that I necessarily agree with every single label that has been given or placed upon someone. I've already told people this in the past. So when I'm talking about these, I'm just talking about them in terms of these are labels, I understand them, and here's what we can do to work with these, for example. So one of them was oppositional defiance disorder. And as I had said, you know, when I was like told, oh right, okay, you know, we're going to send like you down and also this other person down to help with someone who is like the most dangerous person in the UK, etc, etc. Not naming who it is. All I'm going to say is they actually come from here originally. Anyway, and they had been taken down south because that was the best place for them at the time. So we had to go and collect them and plan the management of them coming back up here. Anyway, in any case, I talked about that in the earlier video, and it is something where, like in the past, when I was younger, I didn't think about those things. So my reaction and response was just one of like pure faith. Now, when I went into a situation with someone who is what probably be considered as, I can't even say it on here for the timelines, I suppose. Let's just say, how could I say this in a sensitive way? When I first found out about it, I again took pretty much the same type of way of looking at it as I probably would have done when I was like a lot younger, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine, you know, just in quite a bit of faith. But the oppositional defying disorder is quite difficult to characterise and quite difficult to really pin down, because it can be anything. It can be pretty much anything that they just have a difficulty in understanding, like anything. So anything that you do or say, it's like there's an oppositional to it. Now, that's the idea. I don't think I experienced that every single time with that person. But one thing is for sure is that if they do have that and they do have set problems with other people in a group or whatever, and they're oppositional against them, it can impact every single person. So that's how something like that can impact quite a large number of people, because, for example, if you have a pandemic, you have a set of rules, and someone's suffering from oppositional defying disorder, that means that they want to go against it. It's like an actual mental difficulty. So they just want to go against it. And even if you said to them, for example, now the pandemic's over, I want you to stop wearing a mask, they would actually be defying against that. So they would want to do the opposite. And I know I'm like laughing at it, but sometimes you have got to just kind of like, you know, like question, is this really right? Like, you know, where are we getting these labels from in the world? Yes, I suppose they have manifested as true, and we do kind of have to have a little bit of a sense of humour at times as well, as to just for the fact that, you know, if you didn't, you would just be absolutely going up the wall, wouldn't you? In any case, you can imagine what that might be like. So if you say to someone that has oppositional defying disorder, right, we've got a pandemic, every day, do you know what I mean? We need to mask up, every day wear a mask. They're going to want to do the opposite. Now, then somebody might think, well, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to say the opposite, as I said, like, well, there's no pandemic, I don't want you to wear a mask. So they're going to, like, do you know what I mean? So they're going to do the opposite thing. And I think, to be honest with you, if you go around like that, you're going to be chasing your tail, and you're just going to be going out of your wits' end, or going to your wits' end, rather, if you carry on like that with people. How to support them? You could try that. I would say that there's always a reason for everything, and that all these different labels that are given, quite often they're given by people that are, you know, that have seen this. They are very scientific minded. They are into, like, you know, child and adult psychology, and they will have everything down to a T, and they will think they've got it down to a T. They'll think they've got like a set algorithm or a set idea in mind, and that they've got it pegged and pinned, because again, to a certain extent, someone who's always looking at the psychology of everything, or always wanting to kind of put people into a certain category, usually tend to have some sort of like fear or incapability with things when they are maybe not so able to be categorized, or not so kind of like, exact and precise. So you're also looking at people that may have difficulty with maybe possibly control issues themselves, and maybe even, fear of the unknown, or fear of when things are different or not, exact. So you've got to kind of think a lot of people that are putting these together have quite a few difficulties possibly in their own lives as well. And I know about that because I know of someone who went specifically into psychology and had a lot of psychological problems of their own. So quite often you're dealing with other people that already have difficulties in their own psychological lives that go into psychology. So bear that in mind when you're coming across people and we're thinking about additional support needs in terms of labeling people, putting them into a category, and here's what's wrong and this is what we need to do. I would say try and put God first, and go with that first always as much as possible. I wouldn't go into things in such a scientific manner as to say, well, we're just going to start saying the opposite, so they do the opposite. I mean, you could try that, but I'd be quite careful, because you might end up doing something that would cause them or the people around them quite a significant amount of just unnecessary difficulties or challenges or extra kind of like confusion if they really don't have that and you're saying that, but they've been labelled as that, and you're saying one thing and then you're saying another. So I'd be very mindful about that, and just double check that these aren't just a pile of labels that are being chucked onto people. Be very careful, be very mindful, and just try and, I would say, get to know them and speak to people properly, and try and kind of reason with them in that way, and that would probably help. But anyway, that aside, what else have we got to say? The final video that's coming out, I do have recorded, and I actually recorded it when I was outside. It is really good, and it is all to do with Signal, which is going to be interesting. Signal is the final one, and it's all about, signal strength and that as an additional need. I talked about this heavily, that, when I was based in one part of Scotland, literally my signal was just kind of non-existent. I had to actually, seriously, I had to go to one particular part of the house to be able to get a signal, and you wouldn't believe where. But anyway, that's what I had to do. This is true for many other people across the country, particularly in areas where it's probably more affluent in certain ways, but it's less affluent in terms of like signal strength. So as we talked about this before, that sometimes technology or signal poverty or internet poverty is actually maybe sometimes more prevalent in places of great affluence and places where there's actually a lot of richness and abundance. So it doesn't always correlate, but some people that actually do have poverty by financial means and also have poverty in all these other areas, it can be very difficult for them. Especially, as I said, whereby they are kind of set apart, but they will then integrate. So if they're set apart and they can't get access for lack of signal strength or other kind of means of poverty, even if they're very rich themselves, but it's an actual land issue and a signal issue that can't be helped, then that in and of itself can be a very, very difficult thing in terms of coming out of the pandemic strongly. What would I say about that? I would look into ways to recognise signal strength and also find other ways of communicating with people in that kind of situation as well, and making sure that they have access to all of the different information in an updated kind of manner too. Sometimes you won't have to update everybody in a city the same way, but you might have to update on a more kind of frequent level those that are out with in these other areas which are out of the urban areas. So that's the kind of main thing I would say. But also, to be honest with you, with regards to this being something that is highly manifested by a group of people in society, it also means that as this starts to kind of like fall away, hopefully, we hope, we don't know, we just have to wait and see with the lengths of vaccination, so the scientific side of things, but also the psychological side of things, almost a placebo effect until it becomes sort of like no longer existent, hopefully. That could be the case, that could happen. Especially if the kind of R number like falls right kind of just off the kind of like face of the earth, then hopefully it will just fall away. But that too can be a bit about like, you know, is even this on my radar anymore? When it starts to become non-existent in our own kind of like topical, like day-to-day lives, and becomes less topical rather, then we're going to start to see and know that that's it, kind of really like falling away anyway. So yeah, let's see how things go with it all. As I say, I think it's important to be serious to a certain extent, but also to be able to be lighthearted to a certain degree as well, especially, as I said, with all the different additional support needs that we have, that people kind of like think are evident or take really seriously in our day-to-day lives. They can be very serious. I'm going to be balanced about it. They can be, but sometimes they can just be taken a little bit too like seriously, and sometimes we just need to take a step back and just double check, you know, if that is really the case, and just you know, be measured in our responses to how we help people. Yeah, that's the main point, I think. Yes. Anything else I can think of adding on to this? Thanks. Okay, bye.